Good Friday to you, everybody in Com 81. Welcome to week boom 7. Yeah, week 7. We're coming up on uh what's it called? Spring break. Um, you know, Thanksgiving week, I guess. All right. But that will be, a couple weeks up. Hello. All right. Good week to everybody. I am obviously not sufficiently caffeinated. It's mm, early-ish here where I am. Very stormy and end of the week. First of all, apologies for the delay in this video. Very, very busy week this week with your things and others. But let's get into stuff for this week, and then let's take a look at what you did last week with some indicators, hints as to how the material that you covered might be queried on the exam. Okay. All right. So this week we are going to put another book in the can. We're going to finish reading Macroeconomics. I have another little YouTube video for you. In fact, Don Tapscott's TED Talk. That's, just to sort of help the material sink in and stay in your mind. All right. I typically do not draw questions from the TED Talks. I do, important to note, draw questions by way of the final exam from my talks from these videos, but not from this other stuff. Okay. This is for you. And then also you should be working on, or, I guess we're about the front part of October, so maybe you're not working on it yet, but start thinking about your technology tool assignment that's due November the 3rd. It's worth 100 points. You can check that out over in the assignments folder. Okay, let's take a look at last week and see what you had to say and if we can add anything to the answers that are helpful. What are two important question number one? What are two important implications of the new technology in creating for the future distribution of music, televisions, television programs, and films? Not two. What new technologies? Okay. Two important implications. Okay. Brianna, let's take you. You were right at the top here, which means you went last. In fact, you're just a tad late, Brianna. One important implication that new technology has created for future distribution of music is the idea of self-delivering music. Okay, now, Brianna, I'm not picking on you, but I'm gonna encourage people to be very, very deliberate about what you write. Okay, is what's important the idea of the thing or the actual thing? So is it the notion of self-delivering music or is it self-delivering music? Okay. Accustom yourself to being deliberate about what you say, or as the old expression goes, focus on saying what you mean so you can mean what you say. All right. So back to your answer. Artists are learning they don't have to sell their music through labels or producers to receive recognition, promote their albums, or find new fame, awareness for themselves. They can release their music on platforms that are self-governing, such as Spotify, YouTube, etc. Another implication is the explosion of streaming films for TV shows on multiple streaming platforms. People are moving away from watching cable and viewing their favorite shows, moving away from watching cable, and you should say, and their favorite shows on TV. They are moving in a direction that allows them to watch their favorite shows on demand on favorite streaming platforms. It's true. It's like, Hulu, Disney Plus. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. Take your pick. As streaming took off, many TV channels created streaming services to stay in the sights of their audience, pushing cable back to the back of everyone's mind. I don't have a cable subscription anymore. I mean, I used to. In fact, I had a cable subscription and that anchored a landline in my house. And then when I got rid of the cable subscription, the landline went away. And I think it was a couple of months, maybe even year, before I got around to removing the landline phone. It was just sitting there, attached to nothing. So that is true. This is another change, another disruptor. In scanning through your answers, though, there is one that I want everybody to be particularly aware of. Valerie, you put your finger on it. The emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and algorithms recommend systems of transformed way people interact with media platforms, increasingly personalized viewing and listening experiences. Okay, you're sort of circling the drain here. But let's see if people, if anybody, let me just double check your answers. Anybody hit it exactly? Not really. Okay. Okay. So here's something that you should be watching out for, both in terms of your career arc and in terms of market opportunity. Because look, shifts in markets, and in this case, we are talking about communication. That is, this is how produced products of communication, music, TV, whatever, get to the consumer. Okay. So that's, understanding that, if not participating in it, you don't necessarily have to participate in it. Understanding that is your business. AI, artificial intelligence, is now proving to be a major disruptor in this field. Why? Because not only is it's fluid across the existing changes, that is, streaming platforms, self-promoting, because there's really no self behind AI, self-promoting platforms like Spotify and YouTube, et cetera, but in addition to that, in addition to its fluidity across these platforms, it's displacing producers. That is, you'll have a single individual who produces content that may or may not sound anything like that individual producer. And both for this form of communication product, music, visuals, whether that's, TV or what have you, and for your prospects as communication professionals, this is a major disruptor. I think I heard it best said by an expert in the field, that it's not that AI will replace people. It's that people who understand AI will replace people who don't understand AI. That's got to be your challenge and your charge. Okay. Because it's simply where the business is going. Question number 2. Despite the promise of political leaders serving government with openness and transparency, we have seen very little change in the secrecy and closed door deliberations that give the public very little influence in the working of government. Tapscott and William had many ideas for changing our inept political system. Which one or two, a couple of these ideas, if any, might be implemented within the next 5 years? Now, here again, I part with the authors in some of their basic assumptions in making these assessments. So I want to say this on the upfront. First and foremost, quite deliberately and with good reason, the top tiers of our government are not designed to be influenced directly, like this direct pipeline, by the masses. They're not democracies. That word democracy comes from the Greek word demos, meaning the crowd, the mob. And the reason for that is that the crowd, the mob, is easily influenced, and without necessarily, full disclosure and the best of information. I mean, it's ironic in a way that on the one hand, you'll have people on, and I'm not pointing any fingers or not taking any sides here, but you'll have people on the political spectrum over here that will be very upset about the presence and impact of fake news, which is not going to go away. In fact, this has always been a conundrum within the communication spectrum. Misinformation or information interpreted in a way that was not intended by the sender. Okay, I mean that's one of the fundamental challenges of communication is sending out a message and then reading the feedback in such a way that you get a clear impression of the understanding of the message before the understanding gets away from you. Cracker Barrel recently stands out as an example of why this is important. Okay, we're going to have this big rebrand, and we're going to change the logo, and we're going to change the interior. And by the way, I'm not, I don't typically eat in Cracker Barrel like places. It's not that I'm a food snob. I just have a gluten allergy, and places where there's a lot of wheat and everything, like flour, I'm not in there. So anyway, so I don't, it's like, but anyhow, but once the momentum of the message got going, the mistake that the company made was not putting in sufficient return message devices, that is measurements, to test how this was being received before it picked up momentum and got away from them. And and it's rarely a majority. It's rarely a majority, by the way, of a revolution or reaction that can cause problems for an organization. So, was it a majority of people who went to Cracker Barrel that didn't like this? Probably not, but it doesn't have to be. And by the time the message got away from them, it was doing much more harm than good. That is the message of, we're rebranding, we're changing the sign, we're changing the interior, we're changing the message, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't build these feedback mechanisms. Okay. Back to government. Our system of government is not directly influenced, and it's ironic that the on the one hand, there are political parties that go on and on about fake news and fake information, and yet advocate for the direct control of government by the very body that's easily duped by fake information. And the framers of our system knew this very well. This was not a new phenomenon. And that's why that at the top tier of our government, at the national level, it's not a democracy. It's a republic. The term coming from the Latin term res publica, representative republic. So it's like you hire somebody to go somewhere else to do the job of governance in your stead. You don't go, and you and your, our fellow citizens don't go straight to it. So in a system in which you have a body of individuals, Congress and executive and judiciary, that are hired, elected on your behalf, you're not going to have full transparency, because you already have a layer in between you, the people, and then the process of government, which are those that you sent to do the job. So this is where I part ways with our authors. Now, at local levels, yes, our systems are designed to be democratic. That is, demos, everybody votes and everybody gets, a say. And in that respect, there should be a lot of transparency. And at local levels, there is not. Okay. So how might we change this? Sarah, Tapscott and William argue that government systems need to evolve by embracing openness, collaboration, citizen participation, much like the network models reshaping business and media. One idea I could think realistically be implemented within the next 5 years is open data initiatives, where governments make non-sensitive information freely available to the public. This would allow citizens, journalists, and researchers to analyze data, hold leaders accountable, and even create apps or tools that improve public service. Another idea that feels within reach is crowdsourced policymaking. That's interesting. Where technology platforms invite citizens to contribute ideas or feedbacks on legislation before it's finalized. With more digital engagement tools and social media integration, I think these changes could help rebuild public trust and make politics more transparent and participatory if leaders are willing to give up some control. That's interesting. I don't know that I would fully agree with you, but in these sorts of questions, what I'm looking for is your understanding of the issue as presented by the authors, and then you're thinking through possible solutions. And so, if you had something like this on the final exam, a wink, I go, oh, okay, yeah. I think though there's a germ of what you're saying in there that could be interesting. I think perhaps if we had really transparent um, information about budgets and spending, show people what's happening to their money, and that tends to get people's attention. Now, one caveat, however, again, back to percentages and people that change things, and it's not majorities. Okay, there's a tendency when you show people where all the money is going, for people to be more, not less, restrictive about where their money is going. And one of the tendencies that you find, and you're seeing this play out on a national level, is those voter blocks that are most active. And right now, the most active demographic, this may change in the future, I doubt it, but the most active demographic in terms of percentage of vote, that is, what percentage of the demographic gets out and votes, and frequency, how often do they vote? The highest, all right, is in the about 55, 65 and up. It's my demographic. They vote their pants off, all right? And what they tend to do is they tend to have a perspective of, I work my whole life to make my way, whether they did or not. And now I got all of these folks coming up behind me who haven't worked, and they want my money to not work. You ain't getting any. Now, all right, I'm not picking sides or picking on anybody or mocking anybody. Okay, because some instances they're right, others they're not. All right, but what they tend to do is claw back monies that are used, that they themselves took advantage of and are taking advantage of, in monies from the government to help development in the demographics that are coming up. So you have to be careful. Sometimes there are reasons for keeping the numbers out of sight. And they do. Okay, question number 3. Do you believe there is any hope to save print news? Will it eventually meet its demise for reasons explained in chapter 11? Please support your answer with cited research. Now, of course, the objective of a question like this is for me to determine whether or not you've read the stuff, because that I said as cited in chapter 11. So if something like this were to appear on an exam, a wink, it might be something like, what reasons did Tapscott and William give for the demise of printed news? Do you agree? And yada, 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 yada. Okay. Emily, unfortunately, I don't see that printed news will survive past my generation. Okay, now when you write something like this, it's very interesting. Make sure to tell the audience what your generation is. Especially since 2020, we have seen a huge and steady decrease. Excuse me, you wrote that fine. I pronounced it poorly. In newspaper sales, that's my Western accent, sale, coming out again, as well as a huge decrease in investments, which are the main thing covering newspaper or advertisements, not investments. You're fine, Emily. I'm just, half dead this morning. As the printed news media has decreased, digital media has been on the rise as people have chosen to consume the media in this way. It trends with the rest of how we consume media, as we are in a time when we listen instantly to music we like or stream videos we want without. Okay, you lost me here. Let me back up, because it could be that I'm just not sufficiently caffeinated. Especially in 2020, we have seen a huge and steady decrease in newspaper sales. Sorry, my Western accent. I mean, I grew up out west, and it was sales and Windocille and down at the creek in Warsh or Close. And I've lived in the Midwest now for nigh on 30 years, and I still haven't ditched my Western accent, which, you know, I'm proud of where I grew up and what that gave me. But some words still tie up my tongue. Newspaper sells, as well as a huge decrease in advertisements, which are the main thing covering newspaper costs. As the printed media has decreased, okay, as the printed, you mean print media, not printed media, has decreased. Digital media has been on the rise as people have chosen to consume, as people choose to consume that media in this way. Okay, everybody. Now, Emily, I'm not picking on you, but proofread. It trends with the rest of how we consume media, as we are in a time when we listen instantly to the music we like or stream the videos we want without having to wait for a scheduled time or wait through, wade through ads. Newspapers are not structured to survive in a world where audiences are used to having AI sum up the content or read the article to them as they multitask. That's certainly true. I mean, I keep seeing these ads for apps that will just read your stuff for you. And again, look, yes. Come to an understanding of how AI works. Yes. Come to an understanding as to how it is applied in the field that you want to hang out your shingle and make a living. Absolutely. But don't, as you come to that understanding, come to a reliance on the tool that the main product that you're going to get is skills atrophy. I mean, if you take a look at practitioners in fields that are highly demanding on the practitioner, and then here's the most important part, B, stacked full of serious consequences for failure to practice well. Professional sports is one of those fields. All right. And since it's the season, I'll just pick football. Okay. Football players, especially professional football players, exist in a world, and among football players, by the way, they say that the abbreviation, the acronym NFL, it doesn't stand for National Football League. It stands for not for long. Okay. They are in a business, an environment in which the penalty for failing to do and execute their job precisely as they are intended to is quite high. It's either dismissal within a matter of minutes, hours, days, or months, or career-ending injury. One of the things that you'll note about practitioners in this field, in the Professional Football League, is they spend a lot of time going through physical exercises. And I don't mean, like lifting the weights. I mean body motion movements that train automatic and autonomic responses. I mean, they spend time jumping up and down with their feet into tire holes, or running in between fixed targets, or having people chase them, or pulling on ropes and lifting in the practice of their business, that is the execution of the game. There's nobody running with their feet in tires. There's nobody practicing yoga and ballet. They're honing the essential skills that they need to draw on in an automatic way under a very high pressure and very high stakes environment. Learn from that. They do not engage in activities that promote skills atrophy. Because the cost of being caught out in a situation in which you have to respond quickly, the cost of them is their career. Beware. Okay? Beware. So yes, become familiar with how this technology works. Do not rely on it to do your work. Okay. Anyway, in a world where audiences are used to having AI sum up the contents or read the articles to them in multitext newspapers, ask their audiences to wait and slow down. And we are losing our tolerance for such tasks thanks to digital world waving those requirements away. Okay. I think you are essentially correct that this is the trend in news. However, and you mentioned 2020, there was something interesting if you look at the numbers that came out of 2020, and that was there's actually an uptick and a fairly aggressive one. It wasn't like, just like this little blip in the sale, the purchase. That's easier for me not to mutilate with my accent of print media, not necessarily news media. Okay, so there was actually the birth of new outlets that are not only surviving, they're thriving. And I have one here in my hot little hands. This is a publication called Hearth and Field. All right, and I happen to really like these guys. Notwithstanding that my stuff is often in it, okay, that is, I write for them, but they have tapped into what came about from 2020, and that is this sort of longing that people had to get back to a tactile experience in reading. See, this is what's this? This is the latest issue 4, and here's here's a piece by me. Okay, and they print on really high quality paper. Actually, I think this probably age as well as the National Geographics that are stacked all over my shelves. They send out, when you become a subscriber to the magazine, and these are quarterly, so you get this 4 times a year, and it might be it is what might be called part of the slow read phenomenon, which is actually moving up in terms of adherence. Okay, so it's extremely tactile based. It's like, it feels good, it even smells good, it looks good, very rich colors. See, okay, very lush. And when you become a subscriber, they send out tactile items like leather bookmarks, which I don't necessarily use. I have a big stack of tickets that get used, that I use up or have been used up in the times I've lived in Paris and rode the subway, and I like to use Paris subway tickets as my bookmarks. Anyway, and they send out coffee mugs with the subscriptions. Okay, it's very tactile in terms of the reader experience. So this is not news, like deep media news. So I believe you're correct, Emily. But for those of you that are interested in say where the market is going, or maybe find yourself in a place in which you're working for somebody or an entity, and it's like, can we pick up a little traction, tapping into the desire of the reader, of the individual, to have this tactile experience? The answer, in terms of the numbers, especially since 2020 with the lockdown and everybody was separated from each other, and the normalized tactile experiences, going out and feeling products and things they didn't even think about. They're like, oh, I really miss that. That kind of stuff has gone up. Okay, interesting. All right, question number 4. Among the 5 priorities of innovation discussed by Tapscott and William, which one should be a priority in being implemented in an organization that you are a part of? You can be like an employee or a volunteer, whichever, 6 of one, half dozen of another. James, let's take a look at what you did, because you went first. You were way down here. If I had to choose one, writes James, I would probably choose collaboration. The reason being is that it's easy for us easy for us to all be working hard, for us to all be. Okay, beware of the split infinitive, which is allowable, but still not your best friend. For us to all be working hard in our own department. So collaboration break down those silos, breaks down. Okay, folks, and I'm not picking on you, James, but proofread. Okay, there are so many digital tools nowadays to connect and share things, even when we are not in the office. Offering a hybrid digital meeting space so that if someone is on the road or working from home, they can still join the meeting. Yeah, and I think that's a good example. I wonder though about life to work balance. Thinking about everything connects. I mean, it does connect. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, and I mean James or anybody else, about the delineation of space and time between this is my workspace, this is my work time. Now, hey, guilty. I went through a long phase in my life in which I was constantly blurring the two, much to the dissatisfaction of my wife. And then I reached a point in which I said, basta così, as the Italians would say. I say, no mas, no more. And I've become very deliberate about delineating my time and my space, even within the space that I work in. Now you can't see it, but off camera over here, there's sort of a work area. It's kind of like a big easy chair with a lamp and a couple of end tables near it. Okay, I mean, it's only, it's got to be less than like 8 feet away from me, 9 feet away from me where I'm sitting right now. But in that space, quite specifically, I only do certain sorts of things. That is, I'll sit into that space. That's a space in which I relax and reflect. I may work in that space if I'm editing something that I'm working on. And right now, I'm finishing another book, and I have a system. This works for me. All right, after I write something, all right, I always print it out. Let's get back to that tactile form. And then I sit down in that space, not in this space, not in, if you see behind me, this is another workstation that allows me to stand up and work. And that computer holds a lot of my production equipment that I do for audio visual work. And you can't see it, but I'll show it to you off camera. I have a microphone that hooks up to a control board that's part of that audio visual work. I have gotten to the point where it's like, look, man, my entire life has become one long, never stops work blur. No. So I've become very deliberate about delineating that space. And I recommend that you do the same. This is the reason that I'm telling you. You're right, James, that collaboration is important, and there are these tools that allow for it. Absolutely correct. And if this sort of thing were to appear on an exam, okay, wink, it might be something like, which of the following 5 is not among or doesn't comprise the priorities of innovation as discussed by Tapscott and Williams, that sort of thing. Okay. All right. Good answer. Okay, everybody. Good work. Good week. I finished, all of your week 1 through 4 are graded, so that's closed. I am now grading your part 1 of your paper, so I'll have that back to you, about mid-month. All right, and give you lots of time to finish part 2. And if you get a note on there that I'd like to speak with you, this doesn't mean necessarily that there's something wrong. It just means that there are some patterns that I think could be best addressed if we talk. And I always set that up. I try to be as flexible as I can with your schedule. And I always set it up by Zoom. So, we can see each other and we can share a screen, and I can put your paper up and say, hey, look what's going on here. And okay. So if you see one of those, be sure to get back to me and don't be worried about it. All right. It's that I'm here to help. Okay, everybody. I think about you. I pray about you. And I look forward to seeing you on Canvas. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.